Welcome back. We showed a cover a few minutes ago from Dave Campbell's Texas Monthly. It is Texas Yearly. It is the golden standard in Texas football, high school, college, in the NFL. And we're going to talk about that right now with our guest, Shehan Jeyarajah, joining us to talk about the Aggies. Shehan, thank you so much for making time. It's a pleasure to have you on. And we can't wait to hear what you've discovered and your readers have as well, or will, on what it looks like out there. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
So, is this going to be the year that the Aggies finally get that get to Atlanta, contend for a championship? Last year was very close. What's it look like?
Yeah, I think that this has the potential to be a really big year for Texas A&M. And like you mentioned, they've kind of been waiting for this moment ever since they entered the SEC, ever since, winning 11 games in their first season. But, you look at what happened last year, 9-1, a trip to the Orange Bowl, a win in the Orange Bowl. And now you head into the year potentially as a top 5 team in the country. You end the last year number 4 in the country. I mean, this is different, right? We've seen Texas A&M kind of have good teams before, but this is a different level coming out of last year and heading into this year that we've ever seen. And we felt that made them a great cover subject for the cover of Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
And by the way, I used to live near the Texas border and used to go, and we're over there all the time. How long? I realize this way dates your lifespan, but how long has this magazine been in existence?
So we put our first issue out back in 1960. Of course, Dave Campbell, the namesake of the magazine, put it together on his kitchen counter. We've put a summer edition out every year since then. So this was our 62nd edition of the magazine, and in my opinion, it's one of our best yet.
Well, that's fantastic because it is, it's not only known in Texas, it's known all over, but it is incredibly well regarded and almost sacrosanct out there in Texas. So let's talk about the Aggies, though, and I know some negative Nellies are saying, well, Kellen Mond's gone, but there is so much talent there at specific positions, and it's deep. Let's start with quarterback, because Kellen is a lot to replace, and I know that has been a big topic of conversation out there.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that heading up through camp, that's going to be the biggest storyline, is that quarterback position. But they've got 2 kids who they really like. They've got a quarterback named Haynes King, played at Longview High School, led them to their first state championship, in a good 80 years or so. So, this is a kid who kind of is tailor-made for this Texas A&M program, right? East Texas kid, coach's son, legendary force out in Longview, Texas. So he obviously is going to have a great chance to win this job as a redshirt freshman. They also have Zach Calzada coming back, a long-time backup quarterback with this program. So they have options there, even bringing in a kid like Eli Stowers, who was a top 300 kid from Denton Geyer. They have the talented quarterback room. Of course, it's going to come down to who ends up winning that job. If you ask me right now, my money would be on Haynes King, but I think anything can happen.
Shehan, in terms of the strength of this team, I would guess it's going to be on the line of scrimmage on both ends, both sides of the ball. But let's stay on the offense. What's the rest of the offense look like? Well, other than the running back, of course. But give us the overall perspective there.
Yeah, I think that on the offensive line, you bring back one of the best offensive linemen in all of football in Kenyon Green, probable All-American. And in fact, surefire preseason All-American, going to be a first-team All-American. You replace 4 other places there. That's going to be the biggest question, I think, even bigger than quarterback on that offense, is replacing those 4 other guys on the offensive line. At running back, though, you've got a kid in Isaiah Spiller, who some have seen as one of the first running backs off the board in the 2022 NFL draft. I think that receiver is probably going to be one of the most important positions that they put out there. Anaya Smith is a guy who's played both running back and wide receiver. I think we might see more of him at wide receiver this upcoming year. And now it's going to come down to who's going to develop. That was an issue for them last year. They bring back a kid in Caleb Chapman, who tore his ACL during the Florida game, who was a big-time player for them before he tore his ACL, but you kind of need to develop those guys around it. So I think that the thing that you have to be most optimistic about is that you have those centerpieces. You've got a first-round offensive lineman. You've got a potential first or second-round running back. Now it's just about putting those other pieces around them together.
Let's continue talking about the Aggies. On the defensive side of the ball, I have a feeling you're going to throw a bunch of names at me that the NFL scouts are savoring. So what's it look like?
Well, I think the biggest thing that you say is that you have 9 guys back on that defensive side of the ball, and that's one of the reasons that I think that we're most optimistic about what this team can accomplish. Because especially on the defensive line, you mentioned I'm gonna throw some names at you. Marvin Leal, potential first-round pick in the upcoming draft next year. I think going to be the breakout player maybe in the state of Texas next season. You got a guy in Michael Clemens, another one of the kids who's on the cover of the magazine, of course. You've got a kid like Jaden Peavy. You've got a kid in McKinley Jackson. You've just got a lot of names that you can throw out there on the defensive line, and I think that's going to be one of the reasons that this unit has the potential to improve a whole lot. And then on the back end, Miles Jones comes back for another year of eligibility, another kid who's on the cover. Damani Richardson was hurt for parts of last year, and now he's fully healthy. I mean, I think they've just got so many guys at so many different positions, and they lose their star middle linebacker, they lose their big defensive tackle, but I think they've got the pieces in place to replace those guys at just as high of a level. So with another year of development in this system, I think that they're going to have the opportunity to be really good.
The schedule, I think we get so hung up on that one game against Alabama, but let's come back to that last. Let's talk about the schedule and how it fits. I mean, you got that game against Colorado, which is really interesting, especially that game is in Denver. Kent State, Colorado, New Mexico, and Prairie View is the other non-conference game. Alabama at home, at Missouri, a tricky game there, at Ole Miss, and then at LSU. I've seen tougher schedules. How about like last year?
Right. No, I think that this is a very manageable slate for them. But, you do get a game in Colorado where I think you get to play somebody with a real level of competition. Colorado going 4-0 in the Pac-12 last year in their shortened season. And I think that's going to really tell us right from the beginning, how does this Texas A&M defense match up? And I think it's going to be a good challenge for them. And again, when you play against Arkansas at Jerry World, I think that's going to be a good opportunity for them to show, this is the type of team, this is the type of unit that still has the ability to go out and dominate SEC teams. But I really think, I mean, it's simple, but I think it does come down to that game against Alabama at Kyle Field. I mean, I think that every other game on the schedule, they should be heavily favored. Maybe LSU comes around, but I think A&M's going to be favored. So it does come down to that game against Alabama, whether or not they're going to be able to go to Atlanta.
Sean, before you go, I want to talk about the state of Texas, and especially from a recruiting standpoint. Jimbo is a great recruiter. He's not the only one out there. UT has a new, for Tennessee fans, that's the University of Texas, new coach, obviously, in Sark, that so many people are excited by. There are plenty of other schools out there. What does the recruiting landscape look like? And on top of that, before I even let you answer it, Nick Saban came in there last year and ripped off a couple of the top players, as did Ohio State and others.
Well, I think that's been the biggest thing that you've seen over the last decade. When you look at Texas struggling, obviously, and even with Texas A&M, being good but not necessarily getting over the top, is, you look at that state of Texas in recruiting. And I think one of the cool things about the state of Texas is that you can tell in real time what the trends are, what people think of this team based on recruiting in Texas, because everybody recruits Texas, right? And I think that over the last year or two, we've really seen that Jimbo Fisher has done a tremendous job of locking down some of the best players from that state. You have some kids at the top of the state of Texas this past year who were committed to other schools outside of the state and ultimately decided to stay home. Kids like Shamar Turner, kids like Tumisi Adeleye. Like these are guys who would not have stayed in the state of Texas the past couple of years. And I think that that's going to be key, right, for Texas A&M, is if you can become the place where kids are going to stay home, where they're going to, not look outside of the state. I think that we've seen in years past that getting to dominate that state is good enough to win you a national championship. We saw that in 2005 with Texas and haven't really seen that consistently since then. And, I think that there has been an early bump when it comes to the University of Texas in terms of keeping some of those offensive kids home. There's a lot of excitement about Steve Sarkisian, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that, if Texas A&M can weather this and if they can start beating out Ohio State, start winning a couple of battles against Alabama and LSU. That's really going to be what the difference is, especially on that defensive side of the ball.
Shehan, fabulous job. I can't tell you how much we appreciated having you, and it's always a treat to talk about the legendary Dave Campbell magazine. You be well, and come back soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. Wow. Thank you very much, Shehan. We will take a break. More to come. We'll update you on some of the scores a little bit later on. We will tell you Mississippi State has advanced to the Super